Don't mind this. This is the most ghetto setup ever for an air fuel meter. I wish somebody sold a kit that was a little more inclusive with the cable management and all of that, but this is what I came up with on my own. Now, we're waiting for the wideband O2 to heat up, and there it is. Okay, so there's no gas, of course, in the exhaust. I haven't run this in a few days. Let's see what happens. So now we're gonna be, for the first few moments, I don't know why it cycled back over like that. See if we got an error on this. That is incorrect. It is not at 7.4%. It's not that rich. There we go. Okay, so this is typical. When I do a cold start, it's gonna slowly go back up to stoichiometric. We're gonna be, which is 14.7 to 1 for the fuel that I use, just pump 87 octane. Where was I going with this? It's going to then engage closed loop. I don't have my tuning software on here. Closed loop, where it's reading the narrow bands, will likely more than manage the cold air intake, the change in airflow, I'm thinking. However, I may need to run some open loop data. They're probably in closed loop now. Collect some open loop data without the narrow bands and controlling fuel, and see what the fuel's like with this new intake. So I just give it a little bit of gas. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical what I would expect. It's interesting though that just fiddling around with it, it seems, it may just be me, but holy cow, it's like the engine really wants to rev now. I'll be excited to take this for a drive and collect a little bit more data, but so I've got it warmed up a little bit. Actually, yeah, it's warming up. I'm running just a tad lean. I'm not using long-term fuel trims. They don't work with my setup here. So I'm gonna go around the block once while it's warming up. We're just gonna do that with the closed loop on and see what we've got. Also interested, because I've been tuning Spark, if I have any issues with, just look at retard. See, so we're not getting anything there. Fuel trim, map error. We're gonna go back to the fuel, because I'm told that you may want to retune your fuel after you put in one of these cold air intakes. I may be a bit of an exception to that, because I'm running speed density, meaning I'm using the map sensor for my fueling strategy and not the mass airflow sensor in the intake itself. Another thing, I should check what our ambient temperature is. Give it a little go there. Fuel does seem to be pretty good. We'll do one loop with the closed loop on, then we'll do another loop with it off. I want to say it feels a little snappier, but you know, I'm just driving in my community. I'm only really taking it up to what I can without making neighbors mad or causing a problem. Very harsh first 2-second shift. That's something I've been working on. I built my transmission and I put in a boost regulator, boost valve for the pump, as well as some goodies for the pump, and that's made the shifts a lot more positive, a lot more firm. And I've pulled some of that back in the tune, but not quite enough yet. So I don't see anything alarming there at first glance. Now, if you go talk in some of these tuning forums, they'll say you need to have your fuel within 1 or 2% of ideal. And I found that is extremely difficult, especially on the lower ends, to get that close. We do have a cell there that's above the 5%, but likely that's just a transient. Let me show you really quick. What are the counts on that? I assume they're very 15. That's not really enough. I do have, I think I'm averaging 25 hits, cell hits. I don't know, but you want to make sure you have enough data in there before you make a decision on tuning. And I'm just kind of playing around with the throttle right now. So on the rich side, I'm not too concerned. That's the negative number there. It's pulling fuel. But if it's adding fuel, then I'm a little more concerned. 5% can bring you down to a ratio, you know, I don't know, if whatever 5% of, that's not quite 1 point of air to fuel ratio. So there's nothing bad there. I should be able to run that. Now I'm curious. I'm gonna discard this data here. But in HP tuners, you can override, where is it here? I can turn off closed loop. So closed loop is now off. Long-term fuel trims, those are always off. Now let's see what we're getting in these cells. Just curious if I should have looked if I had any spark retard. I did advance my timing a little bit on this. Not a lot, but so I should be, geez, it's a little bit snappier right now. So we're just gonna drive like we should. Last time I was kind of fluttering around with the throttle a little much. It's like maybe it needs a touch. 1600, probably not, to be honest. And mostly I have optimized this truck in the tune for idle and cruise. Most people, they want to just go for peak horsepower right away, but it's very important to me that this is efficient and runs well. So I spent the time this time learning to tune idle and cruise. So I think I had this before. Let's see if we can get a little more pressure under 1600 here. I think throttle response has improved. I really do. But so far, so good. Everything seems to be in line. I don't know what ambient temperature is right now. I should look. And if I remember, I'll put that on top of the video, because we are at operating temperature with the engine right now. And the whole point of a cold air intake is to give you as close to ambient air temperature as possible, as opposed to a heat-soaked intake from the factory. And I'm really curious what... Wow, 73 degrees. That seems pretty good. I imagine outside it's not much different from that. I do have weather on my... it says weather on my watch. On these smartwatches. Let me see if I can get the weather. I need to pull over here again. My neighbors think some sort of person may be coming to solicit them, but let's see what the weather is. Weather, it's 60 degrees outside, it's telling me. I do think it's a little bit warmer than 60, but that seems pretty good. Our intake air temperature is 13 degrees over that. That's not too bad. And I'm not, you know, I'm actually not driving down the highway or anything right now, so that would get better if I was. I'd push that air up and into there. Again, I think 1600 was a little bit like that when I was running closed loop. Let's see, I'm waiting for a gate to open right now. Spark, no, not pulling timing anywhere. Ooh. So I'm actually in second gear, and for whatever reason, my tune, if I command second gear with the shift lever, it forces second gear. And then, I don't know, these are a lot of things that I have to learn about what's best for my setup. I do go off-road a lot, and second gear does not lock the torque converter clutch. Do not believe it does on my tune. I'm not entirely happy with my transmission tune, but man, this engine is, part throttle is like a torque master. So I don't drive many diesels. I don't imagine it's quite a diesel or anything by any means. But when I am off-road, it goes over anything. I can just crack the throttle and it will crawl up it. It is fantastic because I don't have to worry about spinning out or having too little power at part throttle and putting it down so much that I lose traction. Or I can just, the throttle is so easy to command the torque, I guess. Lay on a little bit or a lot with this engine that I put together. And that was the goal. So here I'm gonna put a little bit more. No, my door's open here, I think. I forgot my wallet, but we may just go for a quick spin down the highway here real quick and see what our numbers look like when we do that. I gotta pull up to the stoplight. I'm really, really cautious about timing being retarded. I do not want to have any knock. Now I studied a lot of vehicles that have desensitized the knock sensors, including my professionally tuned Corvette, and I desensitized mine ever so slightly so that my cell hit, to the point where my cell hits where I was tuning were consistent, meaning they're in the same spot of engine operation, would consistently report, if report at all. But I haven't completely dialed up the knock sensor desensitization. I'm really nervous about that. I do know when I do full throttle pulls, it will pull timing. It's probably false knock, but I just don't want to completely eliminate that system. So long story short, I haven't tuned wide open throttle spark for that reason. I've only tuned a little bit in the cruise and idle regions. There's nobody behind me. I'm at the stoplight. Let's click spark retard. It has pulled no timing, so this is great. We are still on open loop, and let's give it the beans here. Second gear is a little bit definitely less torquey, but the 4L60 is kind of known for a very low first gear. I got to look at the factory tune. I'm going on about many things other than this cold air intake that I installed. The factory tune, I don't know how it does the torque converter. I used a software somebody recommended. You type in your vehicle weight, your gear ratios, and a few things, and it just gives you the settings to copy into your tune. And I believe I did that. However, I thought I was gonna bust my drive line because it shifted from like third gear down to first. Woo! So I locked out first gear. I think that's why, now that I think of it, when I put second gear on the shift lever, it stays in second gear and won't go down into first. Man, you downshift into first and it's like, oh, on one of these GMT800s with a built setup like mine, and I really thought we were going to break something. I was having my friend in the car and I go, hey, this is pretty cool. I built up my engine, I built up this transmission, and I think it was the first time I just put that pedal down to show him. And even he looked at me like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I think about broke both our necks when it dumped the transmission down into first from like third gear or something crazy. So I blocked that out. I didn't want to break anything. I got traffic behind me. Otherwise, I would want to slow down again. Yeah, this definitely, my idle air temp, I don't know what it is, I can't read this, but this definitely has a better throttle response going down the highway here. I'm only going, 50 miles an hour. It's like a little state road here. And we're going to turn into my community. You can't see all this. And then I think it'll probably go down. I don't know if it'll, just go down to second gear. Don't know. Doing weird things with the throttle. That's definitely not something you really want to do when you're collecting data or tuning. However, I'm not going to take this and update any parameters in the tune. I'm just kind of seeing if the cold air intake made me need to tune again. I don't know if you can see here. The engine has a different sound. I did almost floor the throttle. It definitely has a different sound to it. That's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't think that would have a different sound when I run the engine. I have an unrelated problem here. This is driving me nuts. As long as I am talking about tuning and this cold air intake, I should have really solved this before I spent the money on the intake. I'm consuming way more fuel than I had been previously on my build. I've logged every single tank of gas into this truck since I bought it. And then also, along with that, everything that's been changed on it. And I could look a little closer at that data and probably arrive at some pretty interesting conclusions. But all that aside, right now, I have went from roughly 14 to 15 miles per gallon on the city or in the mountains. It is awesome. Like, I'm getting that when I got, on a best run, I might get that to 5.3 liter. But on this 6 liter, I was getting not quite up to 15 miles per gallon off-road. And now I'm getting 12. And I am not sure why. The only thing I've done, there's two things I've done. One was I tuned the timing, but at the same time, I had an issue with my EVAP system, so I went under to diagnose it, and one of the nipples broke off from the EVAP canister, the one specifically venting the tank itself. Now, I don't think I am leaking fuel anywhere. However, I don't know how fast that fuel would flash off outside of that. I'm taking pictures of the fuel gauge. I tried to fill up and all that in the same day as I drove the car and logged that. But, I do have the parts to fix that. Annoyingly, it's very expensive for all those EVAP lines from the factory. So I went to the junkyard to try to find some, but I guess they break all the time. The junkyard said they really didn't have any. However, the guy did say you can order the connections and kind of glue and refabricate that, rebuild the canister and everything. So I have been meaning to do that, but I haven't got around to it. I would do it under the truck, but I'm deathly afraid of using a heat gun on those PVC lines to remove the old fittings and put the new ones with them connected to the gas tank. And it will suck dropping that gas tank, but interestingly, it's really not as hard as people think on these GMT800s. From, I think they started making like 99 or 2000, and then on to 2006-ish. It's a really great chassis. The interior is absolute garbage. I know they cut every corner possible on the interior, but the rest of the truck is really fantastic. And that fuel tank, it just kind of pops off there. There's two band clamps, band clamps. I'm getting my clamps mixed up. There's two clamps that that are like a band, and they go around the tank, and then you have a few fuel lines to disconnect, which is not very hard. And as you're lowering it, you know, the filler neck and the vent, but as you're lowering it, you'll reach up there and disconnect the electrical connectors to the pump, and it just comes right off. The main thing that I learned the hard way is you don't want to drop a tank unless it's mostly empty. Years ago, I had to change a fuel pump, and I did it, but I didn't get the pump sealed up with that little O-ring seal, and it smelled like gas. So I was like, oh, I gotta take that apart again. I'm too lazy. I'm not gonna drain the gas. I'm just gonna drop the tank. You know, thinking like 15 gallons of gas, or 10, let's say 10 is 80 pounds. Like you can manage that. But I didn't account for it being a fluid, and it was so hard to put that tank back on there. So don't make my mistake if you drop a fuel tank. I'm pretty happy with these numbers. I do know that my power enrichment region, those that look almost purple or blue, they have been a little bit rich since I originally tuned this. Now, for those of you that don't know, I don't believe that is using the narrow bands. Actually, it isn't using the narrow bands to trim the fuel, so it's just doing what I tuned it to do there. And it is a little bit rich. I could get those numbers better in line, but the truth is, a bit too rich is just fine when you are doing power enrichment. You know, you can tweak those a little better on down the road. It's safer that way. That fuel helps cool the cylinder and stabilize combustion, so you are better protected against knock or pre-detonation, any of those things that can hurt your engine. You know, all this I studied and learned on my own. I had mentors and friends that helped me out, and it has taken me a very long time to understand the little bit I do. So if you're trying to figure all this out, feel free to drop me a line. I'm absolutely terrible about checking comments, but you're more than welcome to contact me. I'll put a link in the description below this video. Please do give me a thumbs up or something, a little bit to tell YouTube you do appreciate me, because YouTube has a tendency to just kind of let us fade away otherwise. And I like connecting with folks that can give a hand with this. Other people are generous enough to help me out, so I hope that I could have been a little help to you here. And that is really cool. So this cold air intake did not affect my speed density tune too much. Now, you're most likely using your mass airflow sensor. Unlike me, I'm running HP Tuner's real-time OS, and I don't believe I can use my mass airflow sensor when I'm doing the real-time OS. So your results are likely different. Very strong possibility you will need to maybe tweak that. Well, I don't know. I can't speak from experience. So if you have that mass airflow sensor connected and you collect data, let me know what yours looks like. Thanks. Talk to you later.